It's the autumn of 2019, and a company once worth $47 billion is about to lose almost everything in just 6 weeks. $47 billion. Gone. Vanished like smoke. A startup that promised to change the way the world works. To elevate the world's consciousness. Those were the actual words. But behind the free beer, the kombucha taps, and the inspirational quotes painted on every wall, there was a lie, a charismatic founder, a messianic vision, and billions of dollars from investors who never asked the one question that mattered. Was any of this real? This is the story of the fastest corporate implosion of the modern age. The company that fooled Wall Street, seduced the smartest investors on earth, and then collapsed in front of the entire world. But what nobody knew, not the investors, not the employees, not even the bankers, was just how deep the illusion went. To understand the collapse, you have to go back to the beginning. To a small, struggling startup with a simple idea. Rent a building, cut it up into smaller offices. Add couches, plants, free coffee. Then rent those spaces out to freelancers and tiny companies for a profit. That's it. That was the whole business. Buy space cheap, sell it expensive. A real estate company, plain and simple. But the founder didn't see it that way. He didn't want to run a real estate company. He wanted to build a movement. Tall, long-haired, barefoot in meetings. He spoke not in spreadsheets, but in dreams. He talked about community, about connection, about changing the very soul of human work. And people believed him. Why wouldn't they? In an age of tech billionaires turning garages into empires, here was another visionary promising to rewrite the rules. Investors lined up, money poured in, and with every new round of funding, the dream grew bigger, and bigger, and bigger. Soon it wasn't just one building, it was dozens, then hundreds, across continents. The fastest growing office company the world had ever seen. But the faster it grew, the more money it burned. And almost nobody stopped to ask the obvious question. If you're losing money on every single building, how do you ever make a profit? The answer for a while was simple. You don't make a profit. You just grow. And grow they did. From one city to over 100. From a few thousand desks to hundreds of thousands. The expansion was breathtaking, reckless, intoxicating. Every new opening was a celebration, music, free-flowing alcohol, tequila shots in the middle of the workday. The company didn't feel like a business. It felt like a non-stop festival. And at the center of it all, the founder, a man who flew on private jets, who reportedly smoked on those jets, who talked about becoming the world's first trillionaire, about living forever, about becoming president of the world. This wasn't an executive anymore. This was a prophet with a credit card and no spending limit. Then came the moment that changed everything. A massive Japanese investment fund poured in billions, not millions, billions. Money on a scale almost no startup had ever seen. The legend goes that the deal was struck in less than 20 minutes. A casual tour, a handshake, and a valuation that exploded past anything reason could justify. $47 billion. That was the number they stamped on the company. $47 billion for a business that rented out desks and lost money doing it. The bubble was now enormous, and every bubble has one thing in common. Eventually, it has to pop. It wasn't fraud in the way you might imagine. There was no secret vault, no stolen money hidden offshore. The deception was something far more sophisticated. It was a deception of language, of numbers redefined, of a company telling the world it was something it absolutely was not. The company insisted it wasn't a real estate firm. No, it was a tech company, a community company, a revolution. And tech companies command sky-high valuations. They invented their own measurement of profit, a made-up financial metric that conveniently erased the massive costs of, actually running the business. Marketing costs? Gone. Construction costs? Gone. Administrative costs? Gone. With the inconvenient parts deleted, the losses magically turned into something that almost looked like success. And the warning signs? They were everywhere. The company was leasing buildings on 15-year contracts while renting desks out month to month. A catastrophic mismatch. Long-term debt, short-term income. If the economy ever wobbled, the whole structure would buckle. Then came the self-dealing. The founder reportedly bought buildings himself and then leased them back to his own company, paying himself rent with investor money. He even trademarked a single word from the company's name, then sold the rights to that word back to his own company for nearly $6 million. Let that sink in. He charged his own company millions to use a word he had taken from it. Employees were told they were building a family, a mission, yet many were paid modestly, while the leadership cashed out hundreds of millions before anyone else. For years, the illusion held. The money kept flowing. The valuation kept climbing. Until the company decided to do the one thing that would expose everything: go public, sell shares to ordinary investors, which meant, for the first time ever, opening the books for the entire world to read. And when they did, the questions began. Quiet at first, then louder, then deafening. The public filing was supposed to be the company's crowning moment. Instead, it became its execution. Analysts tore through the document line by line, and what they found stunned them. Staggering losses, bizarre conflicts of interest, and that strange, mystical language about elevating consciousness sitting right inside a serious financial filing. The world didn't just doubt the company, it laughed at it. The $47 billion valuation became a punchline overnight. The estimated value didn't just drop, it collapsed from $47 billion to 20, then to 10, then lower still. Investors who once fought to get in now ran for the exits. The public offering was canceled. Humiliated. The dream of trading on the open market, dead. And then came the reckoning for the founder. The board, the investors, the man who once seemed untouchable, pushed out. Forced to step down from the empire he built on charisma and borrowed billions. The company that promised to never stop growing was now bleeding cash so fast it had only weeks before running out entirely. To survive, it needed a rescue, a bailout, and the Japanese fund that had once poured in billions now had to pour in billions more, just to stop the whole thing from vanishing overnight. And the founder? The man at the center of the disaster? He reportedly walked away with a payout worth over $1 billion, while thousands of employees lost their jobs, and many lost stock options that were suddenly worth nothing at all. In the months that followed, the company shrank violently. Thousands of layoffs, entire offices closed. The festival was over. The valuation that once touched $47 billion would eventually crater toward almost nothing. Years later, the company that survived the public humiliation would finally file for bankruptcy. The dream that promised to change how the world works ended buried under billions in debt and broken promises. And the founder? He didn't disappear in shame. Within a few years, he was back, raising hundreds of millions for a brand new venture from some of the very same investors. Read that again. The man who oversaw one of the greatest collapses in startup history was handed fresh fortunes to try once more. For the employees who believed, for the investors who lost billions. There was no second chance, no golden parachute, just the lesson. A lesson that history, it seems, refuses to learn. So what does it all mean? Why does this story still matter today? Because it reveals something uncomfortable about how money really works. The smartest investors on earth, the ones who are supposed to ask hard questions, got swept up in a story. A charismatic founder, a grand vision, a fear of missing out. They didn't invest in numbers. They invested in a person. And when belief replaces scrutiny, disaster always follows. The deepest lesson is the simplest one. Growth is not the same as profit. A company that loses more money the bigger it gets isn't a rocket ship. It's a time bomb. Hype can build a house of cards $47 billion tall, but it cannot make that house stand. The story of this collapse isn't just about one company or one man. It's about all of us. About how easily we mistake confidence for competence, dreams for plans, and stories for substance. Because the next visionary is always around the corner with a bigger dream and an even bigger valuation. The only question is, will we ask the hard questions next time, or will we fall for the story all over again? If this story gripped you, do one thing right now. Subscribe to Meltdown Files, because we uncover the truth behind the world's greatest collapses, one file at a time. And tell us in the comments, do you think the founder should have walked away with over $1 billion? Or was it the greatest escape in business history? Then watch our next investigation, another empire built on lies, another fortune that vanished overnight. Because the next meltdown is already happening, and almost nobody sees it coming.